Hello, Rama Pupodu. Hope all are in good health, feeling great, wonderful, having a nice life. Now let's go to chapter 44, second, Anand Ashramam. Ramdas reached Kasaragod. After darshan of the Gurudev and others, he remained at Anand Rao's, occupying the small room in his private office. Anand Rao was contemplating upon the erection of an ashram for him and was awaiting his return. He with Ramdas and some others went one morning to the Pilikunj hill in search of a suitable site for the ashram and at last discovered a beautiful spot belonging to Chandavar Sanjeev Rao. On negotiating for the plot with Sanjeev Rao, he agreed to hand over the small piece of land entirely for the ashram as a gift on condition that if at any time the activities of the ashram as a religious institution should cease, the property should go back to him. The work of constructing the building was taken up by Anand Rao in the right earnest, and it was hurried on as the monsoon was fast approaching. The ashram consisted of a tiny room with a raised pedestal against one of its walls to serve the purpose of a cot, and a square open veranda for receiving visitors and holding small kirtan parties. All round the four sides of the ashram a belt of tulsi plants were planted. The site had a charm of its own. On its southern side was a beautiful view of the Paya Shwani river and green fields, and on the other side were hills covered with a dense jungle of green verdure. Soft, cool breezes always played about the ashram coming from the river. In the morning and evening, the air was filled with sweet music of the birds. Before the ashram was occupied, Ramdas paid hurried visits to Mangalore and Puttur. Guber Anand Rao escorted him to Puttur, where he was put up at the police inspector Sundar Rao's house. Hearing of his arrival, many residents of Puttur, both friends and mothers, came to see him. An enterprising young man, full of zeal for the uplift of the school boys, had started a trial institution called Shanti Shibir, where boys were trained in the discipline of the body and mind. A diet free from salt and chilies was prescribed. The chief principle on which the institution worked was the observance of brahmacharya. Life was systemized, and rules and regulations controlled the activities of the student so that they might grow up into pure, noble, and fearless sons of India. Ramdas was invited to the institution by Raman Nambiyar, the headmaster of the high school, and an earnest, simple, and pure soul. Thus, he was brought into contact with young aspirants and the patriotic leader. He was asked to speak a few words on brahmacharya to the boys, which he did in a short speech. The next item on interest during his stay in Puttur was the visit to the noted Sri Krishna Mandir of Saint Krishna Rao, the veteran saint of the place. Kutamam, as he was known by all, was all kindness and love. He possessed a glorious record of religious service and led a life of purity, simplicity, and devotion. Always kirtan, bhajan, and readings from religious texts were going on in the mandir, presided over by the venerable saint. Ramdas gave some discourses on devotion and allied subjects in Sundar Rao's house, which was attended mainly by mothers. He was taken to several houses for dinner and kirtan. Ramdas' brother, by old birth, Narsingh Rao, also had him for a night kirtan and dinner at his house. Here Ramdas noted the power of Ram Mantram on devotee Gopal Pai, who had the reputation of the name going on audibly even in his sleep. His very snoring was continuous sonorous chanting of the mantram. Soon after Ramdas arrived at Kasaragod, he paid a flying visit to Mangalore. He stopped with Sita Ram in Mangalore and also paid a visit to Mother Rukmabai at her father's place. At Sita Ram Rao's, he met an itinerant educated sadhu who started a conversation with him on the proof of the existence of God. Ramdas had a few words with him, but as he seemed to be skeptic and not open to conviction, Ramdas refused to be dragged into further discussion with him. One afternoon, when Ramdas was sitting in the portico of the house with some mothers, a young man was seen standing at the gate of the compound with a bunch of plantains in hand. He stood for nearly an hour looking in the direction of the portico. When the mothers departed, he came up and offering the plantains to Ramdas, fell prostrate at his feet. Making him seated by his side, Ramdas went on talking about the power of God's name and the blissful nature of true devotion to God. As he spoke on, the young man's eye filled with tears, which coursed down his cheeks in streams. When Ramdas finished, he again protested at Ramdas' feet and begged, "Be gracious to give me the upadesh of Ram Mantram." Ramdas immediately initiated him with the mantram and he left. Ramdas was to leave Mangalore for Kasaragod the next day. An hour before departure, this young man suddenly turned up, an utterly changed man. He wore ochre or orange colored robes of a sannyasi and his head was clean shaven and he had a lota in hand. He was bright and healthy looking lad, having the light of meditation in his eyes. He was the youngest of four brothers who had a coffee hotel in Mangalore. The eldest was a devout soul and was spending his time mostly in kirtan and bhajan. Ramdas heard the story of the youngest brother's conversation from the eldest. It was appeared immediately on leaving Ramdas, the youngest brother, whose name was Rayu, got his head shaved and his clothes dyed in red ochre. For his initial bhiksha, Rayu presented himself before the door of his brothers and called out for alms in the name of God. His brothers were both pained and surprised at the transformation in Rayu. They tried to persuade him to give up the diksha and return to live with them, to which he replied, "I am not related to any of you and am no longer yours. I belong to God in future and my life is for His devotion and service." On receiving Bhiksha, he walked away from the place and came straight to where Ramdas was at Sitaram Rao's house. He accompanied Ramdas to Kasaragod. After a week's stay at Anand Rao's, Rayu left for northern India. The ashram work was getting on apace. When all things were ready, with a few selected friends, including Guber Anand Rao and Savur Sankar Rao, who had come down specially for the occasion, Ramdas proceeded with the singing of God's name to the ashram. Gurudev, through weak with old age, having desired to attend the opening of the ashram, also came. For over an hour, bhajan went on, and choice songs were sung by some pious mothers. At the close of the function, Ramdas spoke on universal darshan for about half an hour. After distribution of prasad, the friends dispersed. That's all, folks. Let's see in the next chapter. Thank you. Bye bye. Rama Rama Puppodu.